Hello again. Shall we start with Chapter 3 of Avatar, Book 1 by S.D. Perry, the first book in the DS9 relaunch series? On to it. Chapter 3. The Colonel had not been happy with the status reports, although Shar had the impression she just wasn't happy, not this morning. It's still the same morning. He'd hardly finished listing the various systems and subsystems that were still offline before she disappeared into her office, and she hadn't come out again. Not that he could blame her, given how things were progressing. Short-range shield emitters down. Tractor beam emitters down. 6 of the RCS thruster modules were being repaneled. Almost half of the ODN system still needed rewiring, and the entire computer network was running on one processing core without backup. In short, the station was barely functional. That all sounds like bad news. Shar sat cross-legged on the floor of the engineering station next to a partially disassembled console, checking plasma power levels and half wishing he hadn't offered to work a double shift. He didn't need as much sleep as most, about half as much as a human or Bajoran, but it had been a long week and he was tired. The constant low-level drone of conversation, of tools clattering, and the occasional soft curse was making him sleepy, and he could honestly say he'd run enough system diagnostics to last him a lifetime. Everything had to be checked and triple-checked. Sorry, I have a little bit of the hiccups. This climate isn't helping much either. The station's common areas were set to 22 degrees Celsius, 18% humidity, cold and dry by Andorian standards, making him long for the comfort of his quarters. So Shar is Andorian. Even after Starfleet Academy and a year on the USS Tamberlane, with the primarily human crew, he still couldn't get used to the environmental conditions. Shar tapped a key on the pad next to him and saw that he still had 2 hours to go. He briefly considered finishing with the console and leaving early. Kira and Jast had both urged him to take on half shifts, if he insisted on working extra hours, but a look around him made him decide against it. Everywhere, stacks of partially wired sensor panels leaked from gaping console chasms. The men and women in front of them certainly as tired as he. They were already 3 days past the original deadline for finishing, and he estimated it would be another 4 before everything was back up and running. And that wasn't including the Defiant. Lieutenant Nogg's last report had suggested at least another week. If the SCE would just send a few more people. Typically, DS9 boasted 35 resident engineers from the Corps. That would be the Starfleet Corps of Engineers, I believe. Plus an affiliate group of almost as many techs from the Bajoran militia, which I assume is the crew Rom was on after he quit working at Quark's. But in spite of Starfleet's assurances about more help coming soon, the station had been running with less than half that number since the war's end. Anyone with any engineering experience was being put to work, including Ensign Thirishar Chathane, science officer. If that isn't desperate, nothing is. He wasn't an egotistical person, or at least he hoped not, though he was aware of his worth in his field. Top of his class, already published several times over, and assigned to DS9 just 4 weeks earlier. Only his second assignment, too. When he'd first graduated from the academy, he'd been fought over by some of the best Starfleet scientists working. But he wouldn't pretend to be any mechanical genius. When it came to the physical application of his abilities, he thought clumsy was probably most apt. Taking a break from your troubles, Ensign? Shar started, realizing he'd been staring blankly. He looked up into the teasing gaze of Commander Jast and smiled. pleased to see her, to hear her distinctively accented voice. Which I won't be doing. I can't do normal human accents. I'm not going to be able to make up alien ones. Although she was considered cold by some, he liked Tiris Jast. There was something about her, something inspiring. She projected strength and confidence, as would any good commander, but there was also an unapologetic frankness in her manner that was rare in higher-ranking Starfleet officers. She openly discussed her feelings as well as her ideas, and not for any effect. She appeared to simply believe in expressing herself, whether or not it was diplomatic to do so. An interesting person, and a superb officer. Shar considered himself fortunate to be working with her. Besides which, she knows what it's like to suffer these conditions. Jast was Bolian, but came from a similar environment. In the short time that he'd been aboard, they'd commiserated more than once over the chill aridity of the station. Commander, no, sir. I'm just a little tired, nearing the end of my shift. Jess shook her head. Your second, I imagine. What have I said to you about working doubles? Shar nodded, trying to recall the exact phrasing. Oh, goodness. I'm sorry about that. Shar nodded, trying to recall the exact phrasing. That I'll end up freeze-dried if I don't get back to my quarters occasionally. Sir. That's correct. Jast glanced around, then leaned closer to Shar, speaking low. I know things are in disarray, but I think you could probably slip away if you hurry. No one is looking. Shar grinned, fully aware that she was granting him permission to end his shift early, and relieved that he was starting to recognize it when she was being humorous. Jast was like that. She could be as officially Starfleet as they came when necessary, but didn't flaunt her rank once she became acquainted with those under her command. Or at least in his observation. If it's all right, sir, I think I'll stay. The colonel wanted to get as much of ops finished today as possible. Jast nodded toward the science station where several people were working. Remind me why you're not handling the sensor arrays, Shar. Shar held up his hands, flexing his long, but somehow incapable fingers. I know how he feels. My fingers are long. I am also clumsy. The work is a bit delicate for me. Oh my goodness. I think I might have to go to bed after this video. The work is a bit too delicate for me. I'm sort of acting as a technical consultant. Sir, Jast added, her eyes twinkling, you'll get better with practice, Ensign. Perhaps you should take up a musical instrument or some sort of cloth weaving. Work on improving your dexterity. Yes, sir. Now he wasn't sure if she was being serious or not. Humor was still difficult for him. Andorians smiled often, but primarily looked upon it as a diplomatic tool. They were a serious-minded people, and he was no exception. From his time in Starfleet, however, he'd come to appreciate humor in other species, whereas most Andorians viewed too much laughter as frivolity, or wordlessness. The commander certainly seemed amused. Carry on, Ensign, and no more extra shifts for a few days, all right? Yes, Commander. Thank you, sir. Jast headed for Kira's office, and Shar picked up the diagnostic pad again, glad that she'd taken the time to speak with him. Although still quite new to the station, he already liked everyone he'd met. Jast, Colonel Kira, Ro Laren, Esri and Prin, and Turo Ann, even Quark, whose hard-hearted reputation preceded him, had been very friendly, going out of his way to offer discounts on Andorian delicacies in his bar. Shar was pleased with his assignment to DS9, and hoped very much that he wouldn't be forced to leave. The thought was a shadow, a darkness. He pushed it away and went back to work, losing himself in the simplicity of the display screen's Tolanite matrix, tired but happy to be where he was. So that introduced Shar, Ensign Shar. I believe this was the first POV, I should just say point of view. It's not as simple as when it's written down. From a new character, a invented for the book character. I like Shar. I like him a lot. He's eager and youthful without being quite so naive isn't quite the right word, but he's not a copy of Cadet Nog, is what I mean. And got some nice foreshadowing about why would he be forced to leave. He's also the first person we've met who is pretty happy. Even with all the problems on the station, he seemed quite content, except for that little nagging worry. So that's it's a contrast, and it's a good one. We'll see more of Shar. You'll notice he's friends with Ro. She mentioned him in her section, and they don't seem like two people who would connect very well. So I think that speaks well of him, that he looks past her history and her prickliness to take her on her own terms. Yeah, I really like Shar. I'm not used to an Andorian character. I know Enterprise, the series, had an Andorian character, perhaps more than one reoccurring character, but I didn't watch that series. So, or possibly, this book may have preceded that. I don't know. I'm not sure. Year of publication, year the Enterprise came out. I don't know. So, but Shar was really my introduction to a Andorian character, and he was a good one. He made me like Andorians. Not that I disliked Andorians, they were the blue guys with the antennas, and that's about it. So that's good. Next time we will continue chapter 3. Oh my goodness. I seem to have misplaced my special button, my Trek Book Club button that I flash in every video to... I did not misplace it. It's right here. I do need to go to sleep. Trek Book Club. Go check it out.